Now, we are going to be talking the book of Esther today. And it is a rather very interesting book to be in the Bible at all. So this is one reason why I'm not gonna do a full on verse by verse or book by or chapter by chapter breakdown, but this will be very enlightening for many people that have ever read the book of Esther or think you know the book of Esther, because the book of Esther is actually not about Esther. That's interesting. It's got her name, right? The book of Esther. It's not about Esther. It's about Mordecai or Mordecaius. So let's take a look and see what we got. So the first thing I want you to notice is whenever you search for the book of Esther, you know, this is just on YouTube. I mean, you're just going to see, representation of, woman in place and the book of Esther. Talk about the book of Esther, the story of Esther. But the thing is it's not really about Esther. Like I said, it's about Mordecai. Esther's just a go-between. Right? So, what is the book of Esther about? Well, let's take a look at this book of Esther, shall we? But that's just interesting. First time when I read the book of Esther, I was like, am I reading this correctly? Because I understood how it plays out outside the Bible. You see this pattern play out all the time in history. And so the book of Esther is actually not, I wouldn't say it's not sanctioned by the Lord, but it is a massive warning, in my opinion. My opinion, it is a massive warning. This is how it'll happen. The interesting thing, actually, about Esther is if you just search for, throughout the whole Bible, Lord. And over on the right side here, I'm going to make sure I get it above my, my box over there, my faithful box. But on the right side, this is all the times that the Lord is mentioned throughout all the different books. And one of the things that you do notice, I want to make sure y'all can see that. It's every book is there, and it's mentioned, hundreds of times. Ezra, Nehemiah, they're a little bit shorter, so not mentioned as much. Job, and you can see all the way down to Limitations. But it goes even past that. Every book is listed when you search for Lord. Every book, except for one, and that is right here after Ezra and Nehemiah and before Job. That's where Esther's supposed to be. There's no Esther there. That is very interesting. I noticed that the first time when I fully read through it. Okay. And just to make sure I'm not pulling your chain, right after Nehemiah, before Job is Esther. So that's where it should fall. Okay. What about God? Well, come down. Same thing. Ezra, Nehemiah, no Esther, and Job. Okay. So that's interesting. So Lord and God are both of those words are not mentioned at all in Esther. Now, this is the New King James Version, and I'll be using a little bit of this version, and I'll also be using the Septuagint that I have in a Word doc I'll bring over here in a second. The interesting thing is in the Septuagint, both of those words actually are in the Septuagint. And I can bring this over real quick. This is the beginning of Esther. Esther actually has a prelude to it which is kind of like a summary of the entire book of Esther. So you don't really need to read the book, the prelude, because it's kind of just more of a summary. I called it the prelude. I don't really think it actually had a name, but anyways, there is like God is mentioned right there. So in the Septuagint, which is the correct version of the Bible you should be reading, that word is actually mentioned, God and Lord. It's not actually not mentioned in the verses, but there are these there's these parts where they're like extra text, and they were there in the Septuagint. I'm trying to find it. It's like this one. So when you get down and you have these like verses like 13a, 13b, and stuff like that. And there's different areas throughout the chapters that have these extra verses. And that's just kind of how they're nomenclatured, even in the Septuagint in the Greek. They, some of these will have the Lord, God, and some of these are like letters. Like you see, this is a copy of a letter. Some of them are prayers. So not every chapter throughout Esther will have that, but there are some spots throughout Esther that actually have some of the extra texts. And the other interesting thing that you should know about Esther is that it's written by Mordecai. And that's basically discussed or mentioned at the end of the book of Esther. So if you don't know that, that should just let you very much understand something. And I'll tell you it now because I might not remember it later. But the book of Esther is basically about deception. And there's very much key things that give you context to how to actually interpret information throughout the entire Bible, and definitely within the book of Esther. Because like I said, the book of Esther is not about Esther. It's about Mordecai. And he, at the end, this is the events that he wrote down and he sent out to the rest of the Israelites. He made it about Esther and not him. That is a very devious thing. We're going to see why. I want to real quick start off with this one quick lesson. Remember back to Genesis 3. Genesis 3. What happens in Genesis 3? This is the story of Adam, Eve, and the serpent. The serpent's ultimate goal is to corrupt Adam. But Adam knows not to listen to the serpent. So the serpent corrupts Eve. And then Eve corrupts Adam. Adam gets corrupted by the one he loves, Eve, not the serpent. Not directly, indirectly. That lesson in Genesis 3 is a full-on book in Esther. You need to understand Esther. You need to massively understand Esther. Okay. So basically the story of Esther goes, this is chapter 1. Nothing really crazy here in chapter 1, but it does set the premise for what's about to happen, okay? The king, Artaxerxes, I'm just going to go over to the Septuagint here. The king here basically has a big party, and Queen Ashti is called to come to the party, show off her great beauty and stuff like that. And she rejects him. She does not come. So, and really her name is Ashton in Greek. So there you go. So if you see that, it's Ashton. Her name is Ashton. See, Queen Ashton did not listen to come to him by the chamberlains that were ordered to go get her from the king. And so the king was having this party with a bunch of different governors and stuff across his land. And they all were like, we don't want what Queen Ashley's doing getting back to our women. Makes sense. Okay. So they seek to remove her and they make some decree. No woman is allowed to deny her king or husband, no matter how large or great. No woman is allowed to deny her man, her husband. Okay. And that's basically kind of what's said right here. All right. After that, they then set up a kind of like a beauty pageant contest thing to see who will replace Queen Ashton. Okay. This is where you start to get into very peculiar things that are said. All right. So I'll read this first in the New King James because that's how most of y'all are probably going to be used to hearing certain words. But I want you to understand this is basically said the same way in both texts. All right. So in Shushan, the citadel, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. This is Esther 2, verse 5. This is a very important verse. I would say one of the most important verses in the entire Bible for our current understanding. Actually, I would just say in any time period understanding. Because this gives you context and understanding of what that word right there means. Jew. Conventional wisdom and teachings would say Jews are from the tribe of Judah. I'm going to really quickly read this in the Septuagint, and then we'll keep going. We'll keep going on my thoughts there. Now, there was a Judaite in the city of Susa, and his name was Mordecaius, of Jairus, of Simeas, of Cisseus, of the tribe of Benjamin. So they basically both read pretty much the same. Names are a little bit different. This is correct, the Judaite. Do not come at me. You will be wrong. The interesting thing about this is we have a person, Mordecaius, already saying he is from the tribe of Benjamin. But he's also a Judaite. Well, that's interesting. So that means that this one verse clearly says that word, whether you read it with the Jew word, which is wrong, or you read it with Judaite. However you read that word, they are not from the tribe of Judah. Okay. The first time I read this, I'm like, oh, that literally means that word is not from the tribe of Judah. Because you can't be from both tribes. Can't be from both tribes. Right? He's already from Benjamin. You can't be from Judah. So what does that mean? That means this is a member of an organization. An organization that has not been established previously in the Bible. So who came up with this organizational name? That's a great question. That is a great question. I'm going to come back over here to the New King James real quick. So the previous times, that is, in Esther, the word Jew, Judaite, has not been mentioned much yet. That word specifically in the Greek. So, the first time it is actually mentioned, and right here, the New King James Version, 2 Kings 16. I'm not sure where I am. You can always just kind of look over there on the right panel, and you should be able to see that. So, 2 Kings 16. And right here, it talks about men of Judah. That is interesting. The reason why that's interesting is because that in Greek is not the men of Judah. I'm going to go over here to a Greek source. Oh, kind of thought I had this ready to go. My bad. But it won't take long to get there. All the way down to right here. Yeah. That's not it. Right here. This is it. This is the word. You see right there. Jew. So why does it come across as the people of? That is a great question. It shouldn't be. See, and they're getting expelled. Expelled the Jews. So why in the New King James Version, let me go back to my Esther 8 there. So why in New King James Version, 2 Kings 16:6, why it says men of Judah are driven out or expelled, I have no idea, right? They're driven out from Elath. So I don't know why that is. Why they made that translation issue. Now, the other part in 2 Kings, this one's a lot more important, is down to 2 Kings 25, verse 25, right here. This is a really important verse as well, because this is a little bit confusing. Okay. Now, what is going to be said here is the royal family of Judah kind of rises up and strikes down some people. Okay. Some of the people from the royal family, you'll see that. But it happened in the 7th month that Ishmael, the son of Nethanahai, sure, the son of Elishama, of the royal family, came with 10 men and struck and killed Gedaliah. Gedaliah is the governor that has been put in place from the Babylonians over Judah, over the land of Judah. The Jews, so he kills the Jews. Well, that's interesting. We're going to come back to that. Let me just finish the verse. As well as the Chaldeans who were with him at Mizpah. So you have the royal family killing the Jews. That is interesting, because this was another one that when you read the Bible, that they're killing their own people, right? That's the conventional wisdom. Jews are from Judah. So, we got some interesting things going on. And this one provides that's why when you get to Esther and read this verse, Esther 2:5, it provides you the context to understand Jew. Because that context of Judaite is not referring to people of the tribe of Judah. It is referring to people that practice the religion of Judah. And what is Judah? What's the Judah religion? It's the temple worship. They're temple worshipers. Okay. So you need to understand that context. It does not reference the tribe of Judah. So whenever you see Jews or Judaite in whatever version that you read, and there's going to be better versions out there than some, and everyone in English that I've come across is basically flawed. Everyone is flawed. Because they don't have Judaite. They're going to have Jews for you, right? But anyways, understand that this does not reference the tribe. It references the religious practice, the people that practice that religion. So since they practice that religion, they could be anybody. They could be the tribe of, they can be of the tribe of Judah. They can also be of the tribe of Benjamin, obviously. But they can also be foreigners. Foreigners. I'll come back to that many times in the future. Foreigners. Because this is why the Lord said to do not let foreigners live among you. So, there you go. That is a very important context to understand, not just throughout the Bible, but a big one to actually kind of just, or not just a big one to understand in the book of Esther, but throughout the Bible. This is probably the only reason why the book of Esther, the Lord allowed the book of Esther to be in the canon, in the Bible, is because it provides many clues as to who is among his people. Because that directly contradicts, this one verse directly contradicts that Jews or Judaites are from the tribe of Judah. And they are not. All right. So this beauty pageant is had. And one thing that's really kind of interesting is they go through like 12 months of beauty improvement, which apparently she was already really beautiful. The other thing that's actually kind of interesting when you read this version, the one in from the Septuagint, compared to the one that many of your English versions are going to have, it basically says that, you know, Esther was very beautiful, and Mordecai had taken her under his wing because his brother had passed away. His brother and his wife had passed away. So Mordecai had taken Esther under his wing to help raise her and stuff like that. And it says that in this version, it's just like, oh, you know, he's raising her to, you know, just being that guardian father. But in this one, in the Greek, it says that he was raising her to be of her, to become his wife. That is freaking weird. Right here. I was kind of trying to skim for it. I should have highlighted it. It's right here, verse 7. And he had a foster child, daughter of Aminadab, his father's brother, and her name was Esther. And when her parents were dead, he brought her up for a wife for himself. And the damsel was beautiful. A wife for himself. Let me show you what 7 has over here. The young woman was lovely and beautiful. When her father died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. That you don't wife up your own daughter, bud. Okay, So we're going to keep going from that one. Yeah. Yeah. Mordecai, real winner there. This is another important verse. Esther had not revealed her people or family, for Mordecai had charged her not to reveal it. So basically, they are being deceptive on who they are. They are hiding who they are. Okay. That's very important to understand the lesson, full lesson here. And I'm going to bring up real world events later. Now Esther, this is the Septuagint. Now Esther had not shared her people nor her fatherland, for Mordecai had charged her not to announce it. So there you go. So in both versions, they basically said Esther is told from Mordecai to keep secret that she is of a certain people, from a certain people. It's interesting. That was actually also said, I believe, one more time. Yeah, down here, verse 20. Now Esther had not revealed her family and her people, just as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther obeyed the command of Mordecai, as when she was brought up by him. Okay. So there you go. Both versions will have that. Also, Esther did not let her ancestry be known, as Mordecai commanded her to fear God and perform his commandments like when she was with him. So Esther did not change her way of life. Now, what's interesting here is he says, do not fear, that she should fear God. So he's manipulating her. This is very important to understand in the book of Esther. He is manipulating this situation. He gets her into this pageant. He does all this. He does everything. She's just a go-between. Remember, just like Genesis 3, the serpent, Eve, to Adam. She's just a go-between. You got to understand the book of Esther. Okay. So that's, chapter 2 of Esther is really important to understand some things. Now, right here at the end of chapter 2 is basically kind of the setup for what kind of comes from the rest of Esther. Is two chamberlains say they're going to kill the king or put hands on him, and Mordecai hears it and informs the king through Esther, and the king investigates them, hangs them. And there you go. And it was recorded in the books that Mordecai, had informed the king of this situation. All right, so chapter 3, not really too much kind of going on here. It's kind of just more of the stories going along. But we're introduced to Amon. Amon in this story is kind of like the king's second in command. He's up there. He's elevated, and you can see right here is basically talking about he's been elevated, and he's basically just second in command to King Artaxerxes. Okay, now the king name that's actually mentioned in the New King James is Ahasuerus. So I don't know how they translated this. Oh, because they used a corrupted version to translate this. That's why. If you haven't gone down that, maybe I can make another. I'll do that in the future. There's only one Bible. It's in Greek. So if you don't translate it from Greek, you're going to be wrong. That's basically the short story of it. Most of the English versions are not translated from Greek. They're translated from Hebrew, which they translated the Greek to Hebrew, and then the Hebrew to all the other languages. Doesn't sound like no corruption going on there. All right. Now everybody, after Amon was promoted, everybody's showing reverence. But Mordecai does not show reverence. Now this is where it kind of starts that Mordecai and Amon kind of have this back and forth. You know, Mordecai saying, "I don't bow to anybody but God or Lord," and it's kind of some of the things he says. And Mordecai lets it known to them that he was a Judaite, and this is he lets it known to some people around, and then that gets back to Amon. Amon finds out that he is a Judaite, and so he plans to destroy all the Judaites in the kingdom. Okay, so as then all the people are all the Judaites around the kingdom, Amon then kind of informs the king that there are, you know, these people that are not, you know, like a nation that is scattered among their. This is basically what this is. There is a nation scattered among the nations. There's a nation among all the nations in all of your kingdom, and their laws are different from all nations, and they disregard the king's laws, and it is not beneficial for the king to allow them. If it seems good to the king, let him make a decree to destroy them, and I will pay to the king's treasury 10,000 talents of silver. And the king's like, okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Keep the silver and do you will with the nations, basically the king's response. So, okay. And then here's like what I was mentioning before, like the Septuagint has this extra stuff. This is the letter that goes out that made it, that is in the Septuagint, not there in, you know, it's not there in your other, right? So it should be like right here. So it's not there in your other versions. Wrong thing. Okay. Then the copies of the letter were published in every province in order. Then the business was hurried, and at Susa, and Amon began to drink, and the city was disturbed. Why was the city disturbed? Because there's lots of, sure, there's plenty of Judaites there. All right. We'll speed it up here a little bit because I don't want to tell you all the story. Y'all can read the story. I'm just going to make sure you get the information that really is important in a perspective meaning, because you can read this and you can take some of the perspective out of Esther and apply it to other parts of the Bible, and you have a much better understanding. Okay. Now this is this chapter. This is chapter 4. Basically, there's a back and forth between what just went out and Mordecai finding out, and Esther, and she's basically sends one of her servants back and forth, and Mordecai charges her again that she must do whatever she must do to change the situation, basically. And then basically, you know, Esther says, "Go and gather all the Judeans who are in Susa, fast for me, and do not drink for 3 days, nights, or day. And also, I and my maidens will fast, and then I will go into the king contrary to the law, even if I perish." The law was at the time, if you go into the king and you are not called, he could kill you unless he places his scepter on you. Obviously, that doesn't happen because the story would have ended. So that is where Mordecai had charged her to do something, and she's like, okay, fine, I'll do something. And this is the prayer. This is the extra stuff, the prayer that he adds in, that is added in the Septuagint. So there is that in there in the Septuagint. And so Esther then goes to the king and makes an appearance, and obviously the king doesn't kill her. Esther then says, "Hey," our king asks, "What's going on?" She says, "I saw you, my lord, as an angel of God, and my heart was troubled for fear of your glory. For you, my lord, are to be wondered at, and your face is full of grace. And she faints. And basically, she gets the king and Amon. And right here, this is what she asked for. Today is my prominent day. If I have found favor in the sight of the king, come then, he and Amon both, to the banquet that I will make today. So they come to this banquet. Now, she actually sets up 2 banquets. The first banquet is just like a drinking party. And that at the drinking party, he basically asks, like, what do you desire, right? My petition and my request is I have found favor on the side of the king. Let king and Amon come tomorrow to the banquet that I shall prepare for them. Tomorrow I will do the same. There you go. So she sets up one drinking party and then sets up another banquet after that the next day. And then you get into the Mordecai plot. What Amon plots to kill Mordecai. And basically he sets up some gallows for Mordecai to be hanged on. Okay. And so he commissions gallows to be built. Now, the king then, in a night where he couldn't really sleep, he has basically the chamberlains or the historians kind of come in, the record keepers, the ledgers of record, and they read to him kind of the things that are going on. And they kind of tell him about what Mordecai did before, and then he asks what was done for Mordecai as his good faith. What was his reward? And the king service says nothing. So he's like, okay, interesting. So then Amon's actually standing outside, and the king calls up Amon, and Amon, the king then asks Amon, what should be done to the man I wish to honor? And then Amon makes up this elaborate thing because Amon actually thinks the king's talking about him, not realizing the king's actually thinking about Mordecai. And so he kind of thinks of this great show for him, proclaiming him, walking him around on the king's horse, all that kind of stuff. So he does all that, and then so Amon then answers. And then the king says, okay, do all this to Mordecai, the Judaite, who serves in the courtyard, and do not change from him the word you have spoken, So obviously, Amon does not like that. That should be robe. There you go, not rope. So Amon took the robe and horse, adorned them, walked them around, glorified them, all that. And then right here at the end of 6, Mordecai went to the palace, but Amon went home, mourning, covering his head. And Amon explained all the events to his wife, friends, and his wife and friends. Then this is going to get to another important spot. His wife and friends then tell him, because he's already have this plan to hang Mordecai on the gallows. And right here, they tell him, if Mordecai is from the nation of the Judaites, you have begun to be humbled before him, you will assuredly fall, and thou will not be able to withstand him, for the living God is with him. Remember, this is all written by Mordecai. So maybe that's accurate. But the thing is, we'll just take it as accurate, is people think that the nation of the Judaites is the nation of Judah, or the tribe of Judah, and that is not right. Because the Lord has already done great many signs for the temple worshipers of the tribe of Judah. But there's a new name to describe them that was not there before 2 Kings 16:6. So, okay. So basically, people are very aware of, the Judaites. Whether you're talking about the tribe of Judaites and in my context, this really is talking about more of the tribe of Judaites here. That they're alluding to the tribe of Judaites, not just the temple worshippers, which is now taken on other people outside of just the tribe. Foreigners are there among them. Okay. So the king then hurries Aemon to the banquet, gets chamberlains to get Aemon to the banquet. Now, at this banquet, this is like the little trap that has been set. So at this banquet, the king's like, what is your request? Keeps pushing her. She says, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, let my life be given. My request and my people's request. For both I and my people are sold for destruction, pillage, and slavery. We and our children found for bondman and bondwoman. And I heard what was not intended to. What I was basically not intended to. Just kind of weird on the Greek English translation there. For the devil is not worthy of the king's courtyard. Then the king said, who is it that has dared to do this thing? Esther says, the adversary is Aemon, who is a wicked man. Okay. So there you go. She now calls out who Aemon is. But also, she then uses for both I and my people. So she now lets it be known who she is. She is of the Judaites. Aemon did not know that. Aemon did not know that. He only knew that Mordecai was. So now she lets it be known who she is. At a beneficial time period. Oh, at the most beneficial time period. Now she manipulates the situation after gaining the king's trust. All right. Keep that in mind. Very peculiar timing to let them know who you are. To get the most sympathy to your cause. Then Aemon was afraid before the king and queen, rose up, banquet, all that. The king goes out, comes back in, and sees that Aemon is basically had fallen on the bed, basically begging, and the king walks in and sees that, and will you even force my wife in my house? So now that you see the king has turned on his second in command. And one of the chamberlains says to the king that Aemon had made gallows to prepare for Mordecai in the next day. And then who spoke concerning the king, who spoke to the king about the gallows, and the gallows of 50 cubits high has been set up on the premises of Aemon. So basically at Aemon's house, or around Aemon's property, these gallows have been made. And the king says, hang him there. So Aemon is then hanged. And there you go. So Aemon is done. But you need to understand that the whole situation is manipulative. She does not let anybody know who she is until the time is most beneficial. Man, you got to really understand how Satan works. Got to understand it. This book is massively a warning. It's a massive warning. I'll show you real world evidence. And on that day, this is going to chapter 8. There's a new decree. So then, basically, Mordecai then winds up getting promoted. He gets up into the king's commands, and even later he gets up into the second command and that kind of stuff. But they issue a new decree. And so the king basically is like, okay, I killed Aemon. Basically right here. If all that was Ammon has been given and freely granted to you, and hanged him on the gallows because his hands were to inflict the Judaites. I'm gonna say were to inflict the Judaites. What do you still seek? You also write my name, write from my name, as seems good to you, and seal it with my ring. So basically, yeah, you write something, you seal it with the king's ring, and it's basically like stucco. It's permanent. For whatever is written in the king's commands and sealed with my ring, no man may contradict. So there you go. Okay. So this is where Esther and Mordecai basically undo what Ammon had wrote and sent out earlier. And then you got this big long letter basically describing, what's going to happen. That's not there in the New King James. So I'm not going to go back to the New King James. Then let copies be published conspicuously in all the kingdom, and let all the Judaites be ready for that day to fight against their enemies. So that day that Ammon had said, we're going to kill all the Judaites, they basically undid it and said, be ready to fight against their enemies. So there you go. All right. Right here at the end is also very important. Very important. Oh my gosh. Chapter 8, right here at the end. Last couple chapters. I'm going to go over and read this in the New King James real quick. And I'm going to just kind of, because when I read this, like in English, it was super weird. So weird, man. So weird. Is that same verses? Yeah, 15, 16, 17. Right here at the end. Okay. So Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, with a great crown of gold and a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. Even Shushan here, you get this footnote, Susa. So you can basically just say Susa for all those Shushans. I don't know why it's Shushan. It's because they translated it from Hebrew. The Jews had light and gladness, joy and honor, and in every province and city where the king's command and decree came, right here, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a holiday. Then many of the people of the land became Jews, because fear of the Jews fell upon them. What the freaking A is happening here? It's really this verse 17. But I wanted to read all that so you can get a little bit of a context. But what is going on here? So the Jews are celebrating, who are supposed to be of the tribe of Judah by your conventional teachings, which is absolute bullcrap. This is why I say all the time, read the Bible. Read the Bible. There's little details in there, in verses. The Bible's not about how to be just a good person. It's a history book. It is one of the most important ones. Anyways, so the Jews were happy, and then many people of the land became Jews. Well, what's interesting is if you've read the Bible, you would know up to this point in time, the Lord, even through Moses, David, Solomon, he never gave instructions on how to convert people. Not once. All right. So why are people converting? It's a great question. Why are people converting? Because the fear of the Jews fell upon them. So I'm going to read this from the Septuagint. All right. And Mordecai went out dressed in the royal robe, great crown of gold, and a diadem of fine purple linen. Then the people of Susa rejoiced as they saw. Then the Judaites had light and joy in all cities and provinces where the ordinance was published. And wherever the message was put out, the Judaites were joyful and rejoicing, feasting and mirth. And many of the nations were circumcised and converted to Judaism for the fear of the ancestor Judaites. That is radically different. Okay. And I'm going to go look at the Greek real quick. And this is why it's on Esther 8 here in the Greek. So right here towards the end is this word. This word actually, as you kind of see here, it kind of quickly pops up and it says, meaning of it is Jew. All right, Jew. If I hover over it, let me hover over it again. All right, you see up there, it kind of pops up, Jew. And that's wrong. Now, it depends on how you are looking at translations because, well, one of the things that's actually cool about the stepbible.org website here is if you actually hover over a word, it will highlight all the other words that are the same thing, roughly. So you actually have one right here, which is at the end of that verse, talking about the ancestor Jews. And then you had this one back over here that is talking about all the Jews are celebrating. But you got this one, and this one's different. This one is different. So like this one ends in like a WV. This one ends in like a OIG kind of, or OIG, OUG, OU, OIG, OIG. So you kind of get what's kind of going on there. And this one's different though. This one stands out. This is like a ZOV kind of like a weird letter, ZOV. So if we look up that word, look up that word. It's this word right here. It's this word right here in the middle. And if you look at the translation, the root of it is like this ZW, which is right here underneath it. So it is to practice Judaism, side with or imitate the Jews, live as a Jew. Now, I'm not going to get into the Jew word here. They're wrong. But what you need to understand is, yeah, this is clearly saying that people are now like converting to Judaism. That's basically what's been being said here. Okay. So that's why when I translated it, that's why I said it the way I did. Because I translated this myself. They converted to Judaism. It's the best way to put that. Okay. All right. And then for fear of the Judaites, which that's not how it's basically said back over here. It just says they're, fear from the Jews fell upon them. It's not fear from the Jews, the Judaites, the people of the religious. It's the ones that are from the tribe, because that's the one who the Lord is with. The Lord is with the tribe of Judah, not the religious Judaites. Okay. So this is a really important one, because this would be like the first time that the organization Judaism is actually mentioned. And why have you never heard it before? Because the Lord and Moses and Saul, David, Solomon, they never set up Judaism. So where does Judaism come from? Satan. Satan sets up Judaism. If you want my personal opinion, the Lord actually set up the temple worship. He actually didn't set up the temple worship, but he tricked the people that are, that he wants gone, the Satan worshipers, or the people that are doing all these bad customs that the Lord doesn't want. They fall for the trap, and they go and they convert themselves to Judaism. And then they get more people into Judaism. And the Lord never says anything about converting anybody through Moses, Joseph. Nobody was ever told how to convert people. Not once. So I want you to understand what is going on here. There was a practice from people that are not from the tribe of Judah, representing themselves as Judah, but they are not. And they're bringing in more foreigners. They're bringing in more foreigners. Okay. So this great wrath section here. This is basically the carry out of what winds up happening. Okay. Right here at the beginning, I'll just quickly read this one. So on that day that was originally established by Amon, and then Mordecai and Esther flipped that day and basically said the Judeans can do whatever they want on that day to maintain protection. But really, what they wind up doing is way worse. On that day, the adversaries of the Judeans were destroyed. No one opposed for fear of them. For the chiefs of the satraps, which satraps are basically just like regions, the princes and the royal scribes honored the Judeans for fear of Mordecai's concerned them. For the order of the king was in force that his name should be pronounced in all the kingdom, and the Judeans slew and smote all those who hate them with the stroke of the sword and slaughter and destruction, and did according to their will to those that hated them. What is very interesting also about this right here, this event that happens, this slaughter. And also then in the city of Susa, Judeans killed more than 500, but some names there. And they also plundered. And then it is brought to the king just what all the Judeans have done. And then, king's like, what else do they want? What else do y'all want? And so then the Esther then, let it be granted to the Judeans tomorrow to treat likewise, so to hang Amon's 10 sons. And it goes on and they do it. What is really important about this whole wrathful section, okay, is if you've read the Bible, the Lord has said, nobody is to fight what is to come. You are all to go to captivity into Babylon and to be they're basically to be punished for doing all the sinful things that they wind up doing. Because the foreigners got in and corrupted the people, the kingdom of Judah. And so the Lord had said, you are to go there and be punished. Nobody is to remove themselves or go hide or flee to Egypt, even though some do. The Lord says, I will hunt you down. I will kill you with the sword or famine, starvation, whatever. So everybody's supposed to go to into this captivity. And so since you're supposed to go into this captivity, you're also supposed to be, under their rule. But it seems like they take over. They take control. And it doesn't seem like they're getting punished. It seems like they're dishing out punishment. And remember, the Lord has not sanctified any of this. God has not done and sanctified any of this. This is all Mordecai's doing. The book is written by Mordecai. So these are all Mordecai's testimonies. So this is not done by the Lord. This goes against what the Lord had said. So, anyways. And I'm going to show you a quick spot here. Basically, right here, this is Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah 20. The Lord had not called your name Pushher, but Misbub. My goodness, some of these names. For thus says the Lord, behold, I will make you a terror to yourself and to all your friends, and they will fall by the sword of your enemies, and your eyes shall see it. I will give all Judah into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he will carry them captive to Babylon and slay them with a sword. Moreover, I will deliver all the wealth of the city, all its produce, and all its precious things, all its treasures of the kings of Judah. I will give into the hand of their enemies, who will plunder, seize them, carry them to Babylon. And you, Pusher, and all who dwell in your house shall go into captivity. You shall go to Babylon, and there you shall die and be buried, you and all your friends to whom you have prophesied lies. This is Jeremiah talking to Pusher. So basically, I just want you to understand that, yes, the Lord has said that he is sending all of you to captivity because all the bullcrap that they were doing. And it is so interesting to see what is done not by the Lord's decree, but by the decree of man and by deception. There's a great amount of deception going on here. And I wonder we already know that, well, they're already corrupted. I wonder just what they were teaching. Because, Mordecai, right? It says in the beginning, he's from the tribe of Benjamin. So he's an Israelite. So just what all were they teaching Mordecai at this point in time? Where does he get into his mind that he's supposed to take it upon himself to do these things? Because previously in time, right, there's two accounts during Abram where he comes to a town, back in Genesis, where Abram comes to a town with his wife Sarah, and he says, don't tell them you're my wife. I don't want them to kill me because of you. And the Lord then comes to the king or the governor of that town or wherever they're at and says, that is another man's wife. I will afflict you if you do anything to her. Give her back to him. That kind of stuff. But that never happens here. This is a man manipulating the situation with a woman. That is the entire understanding that should be taken from Esther. There is Lord does not do anything. This is not a book about a prophet, a king of the tribes, or anybody like that, which is most of the books throughout the Old Testament. You got the book of Ruth, which is basically about David, the birth of David, the coming of David. Outside of that, everyone is about the kings, obviously the Moses books, and then you had all the prophets. This is the only one that stands out and is not like any of them, because it's a warning. It is a warning. It's a massive warning. Okay, so that is basically the big stuff that I kind of wanted to kind of call out. And then there's a new practice of rest that is established. And this kind of then goes into Mordecai, right here. Then Mordecai wrote these words in books and sent them to all the Judaites. This is where it is clearly said that, Mordecai was the one that wrote these events. So there you go. And yeah, that's pretty much it that can be taken, that should be taken out of Esther. Esther is so important. It gives you so much great context, actually, how to understand certain wordings. Judaite, Jews, whichever one you want to use, but they are not members, they are not people of the tribe of Judah. They are people of the religious organization, Judaism. Where is that established? First time that is used in the entire Bible is right there in Esther, right there at the end of Esther 8. So they manipulated a situation and got control of the kingdom. And the king allowed slaughter of his own people because they manipulated the situation. Yes, sir. The king allowed the slaughter of his own people to foreigners, who Judaites are foreigners in this situation. So you need to be very much aware of how they seek to get in and get control. They will obscure who they are, right? Esther did not reveal who she was until the time was beneficial. There in, I believe, Esther 6 at her banquet. So you need to be very careful about just trusting people. So here's some real world events and things I'm going to bring up. So here's Keir Starmer, who he even has said that he grew up Christian. He has a Christian upbringing. But what's interesting, his wife is Jewish. Huh. Well, that's interesting. And then most of his cabinets are Jewish. And then he also actually converted to Judaism later. And then what happens when, well, the Jews get control of the king's land? Well, this is the king's people getting beat up by foreigners. This is a foreigner beating up one of the king's people. You want to know how that played out in Esther? There you go. Just getting beat up there. Tries to leave the scene. Yeah, that's what you get. Right? They're just talking about just the stabbing. What's going on? The crime that is going on in some of these European areas. 150 stabbings every day. 50 a day in London alone. I don't even know when this is put out. When was this put out? Back in April. This was put out back in April. And England is crazy on the England, Ireland, Scotland. They're all really close. And here you go. Little kids was decapitated in front of her parents at the park by an Albanian migrant. The media covered up my murder. My name was Emily Jones. Yeah. That's what happens when you got Esther's being manipulated into situations. And then these things happen. I would be willing to bet. Let me go back to that one. I'd be willing to bet when they met, she did not reveal that she was Jewish. I bet you. Because it's the same story that plays out many times throughout history. And then here you go. Female spies are waging sex warfare to steal Silicon Valley secrets. They're using females. It's the same story of Esther. Esther everywhere. They use women They use their beauty to get in. And just because they're beautiful on the outside, don't mean they're beautiful on the inside. Here you go, FBI director. Look, beautiful girl, married to that piece of junk, that Indian piece of junk. Are you kidding me? And then this guy, Elijah, has called out, or not called out, he just kind of made some subtle reference that, oh, she's a honeypot. Because people are starting to catch on to these honeypots. That the use of women to subvert people of power. If you are a person of power, influence, people of influence, really, influence, money, politics, anybody that can be useful to any situation. Oh, hey man, you want to come to my party? And then there's going to be these women around. Every single one of them is going to be Jewish. They're going to be there as a plant to take over that situation, to take control of that king. You think that guy could have got her on a normal day? No way. Not a chance. And there you go. And now since Elijah called out her, now he's basically, they're suing him and using the FBI's resources to sue Elijah. How do you like that? Here's another one for you. Here's a great one for you. If you think this one was wild to learn this one. This man is the first president. Can you see that? All right. First president of South Korea after the split. So if you think that the split of the Korean Peninsula had nothing to do, the Jews were not involved. Oh, they were. This was the South Korea's first president. This right here. This was his wife at the time that he was South Korea's first president. First lady of South Korea. 48 to 60, the second wife of that man. Well, that's weird. I thought the Jews were from Middle East. It seemed like they're all over the world, manipulating all the situations. There's even reports that Jews were going into North Korea right at the end of World War II. But this is a few years after World War II. And there you go. You have a Jew woman, another Esther, being put in a position of someone with a leadership role. And you're like, okay. But when you come check this, and you come down, it doesn't say that on her Wikipedia page. It does not say like where her her ancestry, but right here, this is another one. That she was from a suburb I guess he really is kind of talking about his father, but he was born a suburb of Munich to his father, Rudolf Donner, a businessman from a Jewish family. There you go. So yeah, she has Jewish lineage. She's another Esther. She is another Esther. So there you go. So yes, Esther is a crucial book to understand. It is so important to understand Esther. And I hope you learned something here. It is all about deception, manipulation of the situation. And then once the time is right to expose who you are, to gain the advantage, once I have gained your trust and your love, then I want you to do something for me.